From our studios in Southern California, this is RUNTALK. I'm your host, Dr. Jason Karp. On today's show, we're going to talk about something I see a lot about on social media, and it drives me crazy. So today we're going to talk about the difference between the physical and the psychological. Just this morning, I saw somebody post on Instagram. Welcome, we're on Facebook and Instagram. So welcome, regardless of where you are. Welcome Facebook, welcome Instagram. Got two cameras rolling here. So just this morning, I saw somebody post something that said that 90% of running is mental. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, what, are you nuts? Only 10% of this sport is physical? That would mean I don't need to do much physical work, and I could just sit at home and spend time visualizing and working on my mental toughness, and that would help me run faster. So I have to address this issue because there's something that I see all the time. Hi, Christopher. Thanks for coming. Christopher comes every week. He's like my biggest fan. I wish I had so many fans like you, Christopher. Thank you very much for coming. And everybody on Instagram, hi. I don't know people's names because people join with their, sometimes their Instagram name is not like their real name. So, like Daisy, GEP, Kime, I can't even read all these things. Sometimes people have crazy Instagram names. So hi, if you're on Instagram, hi. So I see this so much, and it drives me incredibly insane that people put so much emphasis on the mental aspect of running. So we're going to break this down. I don't want to just make sweeping generalizations. Let's really get into this and talk about this. That, running is the most primal of all physical activities. There's a lot of research that's looked at how we became, physically how we are. And, I urge you to read the evolution research Bramble at Harvard. David, I think is his first name. David Bramble. Read his research out of Harvard University. He's done a lot of work in the area of how we have developed the body structures that we have and why we are such good runners. And it's fascinating to look at evolution, why the arch of our foot looks the way it does, how we have developed this incredible medium within our lungs of gas exchange for carbon dioxide and oxygen, that our lungs are such an enormous area with a very thin wall. It's the perfect medium for gas exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide. Also, the fact that we don't have the hair of our ancestors on our body. We are very efficient sweat producers. We are the only mammals that cool ourselves by the evaporation of sweat. And that helps us to be endurance runners in very hot environments. We have this great thermoregulatory system. I could go on and on. We have an incredible ability to run, especially long distances, because we evolved for that. And so physically, we have evolved for this, for running. Running is the most physical, the most primal physical activity. And so when you look at that as a backdrop, and then you ask yourself, all right, if I want to train for a marathon, or if I want to train to race a mile, this is a physical endeavor. It's not so much psychological. I have conversations with people all the time about this because they are so strong-willed. It's like, to them, it's all mental. One time, I'll tell you a story. One time, about 20 years ago, I was at the track when I was living in San Francisco for a short period of time. And it was right after this big race that had happened in town, Beta Breakers. And Beta Breakers gets a lot of elite runners, a lot of Kenyan runners. I had commented to him that, once I get over about 50 miles a week, it becomes difficult psychologically. Like, I feel like I'm always running. And so it becomes difficult mentally to get out the door and do more running. And he cut me off and he said, no, in his Kenyan accent. He said, no. He said, this is all physical. If you do the physical work, then there's nothing to think about. And I have never forgotten that. I mean, this was very impressionable on me when I was in my 20s, in my first, the first time I was speaking to a Kenyan runner. And I have since had the opportunity to go to Kenya, and I saw it for myself when I was there a couple of years ago. I was there exactly 2 years ago now. And it really is all physical. If you do the physical work, then there is nothing to think about. We have to remember that we are animals first. We are more highly evolved psychologically. We can think about things that other animals cannot think about. And that is the one thing, the only thing, that distinguishes us from all other animals, specifically all other mammals. We are 95 to 99% of the same DNA as a chimpanzee. A chimpanzee doesn't think, oh, I have to go out the door and run more. Oh, what am I going to do when this feels uncomfortable? A chimpanzee doesn't think about that. A chimpanzee just runs and lives an active life. A cheetah in the wild just runs and they chase after lunch, and they don't wonder, about themselves as runners. They don't wonder, oh, how can I get faster? Or what am I going to do when this feels uncomfortable? They go and they run. It's all physical. And we tend to forget that we are just like them in so many ways. The only thing that makes us different from other animals is that we have this ability to think about the future. We have this understanding of who we are. We have this greater consciousness of who we are compared to other animals. We can think about things in a way that other animals can't think about things. We can reason. We can project into the future. We can work on our ability to deal with discomfort. We can do all those things because we can think about those things that other animals cannot think about. But that is the only thing that makes us different. The way we adapt to physical work is the same. The way our muscles contract, the way they work is exactly the same. Everything is exactly the same. Yet somehow we see ourselves as different than other animals. And so what does this mean for you? Well, what this means is that, if you're training for a race, do the physical work. There's nothing to think about. You just go out the door and you run, just like you're an animal. Most people who go to the starting line of a marathon are ill prepared for what's in front of them. And because of that, then the mind has to, overcome the lack of physical preparation. I've known from the time I was very young that confidence comes from being prepared. When you're really prepared because you have done all of the physical training, there's nothing to be more concerned about. The race will take care of itself. There's nothing to be anxious about. There's nothing to be worried about. There's nothing to think about if you just can allow yourself to do what your body has been trained to do. We are body first. I'm writing a book about this right now, about training your body changes your brain, which affects your thoughts. We are body first. We are not mind first. We evolved from other animals. We are body first. The human existence is physical. And if we remember that and we train the body first, that changes your brain chemistry, which then alters your thoughts. And you develop this sense of confidence. You become more confident when you go to the starting line. The process of training physically also makes you more resilient. There's plenty of research on resiliency as well. The process of training makes you more resilient. It helps you to deal with that discomfort. One of the things that binds all runners together is this sense of discomfort. We know that it's going to be uncomfortable, whether you're racing a mile on the track, which is very intense, or you're running a marathon, which is very slow intensity. It's not high intensity, it's low intensity. But because of the constant pounding of the pavement for so long, there's a lot of muscle fiber damage, and you run out of your preferred fuel source, glycogen, and so there's discomfort that's associated with that. And so no matter what kind of race you're training for, there's different kinds of discomfort, there's different kinds of pain. But the process of training yourself physically helps you to become more resilient. It helps you to deal with that discomfort. And that's one of the biggest metaphors for life. I've talked about this forever, it seems. I wrote about this in The Inner Runner, probably my most famous book. I look over to my bookshelf where my books are when I say that. And so one of the greatest benefits of running is how it helps you deal with discomfort and what that means for every other area of your life. So that's the topic for another day. But this is a very physical sport. To say something like it's all mental is missing the point. If this sport were all mental, then all you would have to do is sit at home, visualize, close your eyes, meditate, visualize, make yourself mentally as strong as possible, and that would be enough to run these races. Clearly, it's not enough. You have to do the physical preparation. To run a marathon, especially when it comes to like the marathon, I hear a lot that people like to say that it's all mental. It's really all physical. The ability to get from point A to point B 26.2 miles later, that is a physical pursuit. It only becomes mental in the situation when you're fatiguing, and then the things you tell yourself in your head when you're experiencing that fatigue. Do you get down on yourself, or do you stay positive and say, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it? Those mental tricks, while they're important, if you don't have the physical preparation, all the mental tricks in the world is not going to help you accomplish the goal. You have to have the physical preparation. And that's, to me, that's what has always made this sport so beautiful, is that it is so pure. It is so all about the physical. We all just watched the Super Bowl yesterday. The team that wins a football game, it has little to do with the team that's more fit, because it has so much more to do with game strategy and making the right plays at the right time. There's a lot more that goes into who wins a football game. Many football games just come down to the last final moments and who kicks a field goal. Sometimes it's a matter of luck. But with running, it's all about the physical. It's all about improving your fitness level. The difference between an elite runner and a recreational runner is not mental. The elite runner is not just more mentally strong than the recreational runner. That would be ludicrous to say to a recreational runner, the reason why you're not faster runners. That's ridiculous. If you were to get the fast runners into a laboratory and the slower laboratory and measure their VO2 max and measure their running economy and measure the speed at which they reach their lactate threshold, the elite runners are off the charts. They have a much higher VO2 max, much better running economy, and they're much faster when it becomes anaerobic, which is what the lactate threshold represents, the speed, the fastest speed above which you start to introduce anaerobic metabolism. The faster that you can run, that it is still aerobic, the faster your races are going to be. And elite runners have a very high lactate threshold. It occurs at a high percentage of their VO2 max, and the speed at the lactate threshold happens to be faster. They can run much faster before it starts to become uncomfortable, because they can run much faster and have it still be aerobic. That's physical. That has nothing to do with mental fortitude. That has nothing to do with visualization. That has to do with physical characteristics. You ever wonder why elite runners can run faster than the rest of us? Why, with all the training that I've done in my entire life, have I never been able to make it to that level? It's not because I'm psychologically weaker than they are. I actually think I have a very good ability to deal with discomfort when I'm running. I grew up as a sprinter, a middle distance runner, and my favorite races are still the 800 meters and mile. Try running the 800 meters a mile as fast as you possibly can. There's a lot of discomfort. Even though it lasts for a relatively short period of time, it's extremely intense. And for those of you who don't know me by now, I'm a very intense guy. That's one of the reasons why I love those middle distance races, because it's extremely uncomfortable for just a short amount of time, and I'm very good at that. And so I've always thought, granted I can't feel what other runners are feeling. I'm not inside their body, but I've always thought that I have a high degree of dealing with the discomfort, that I have a high pain tolerance. But that's not the reason why I haven't reached that level. It's the same is true for all other runners. What separates a fast runner from a not fast runner is physiology. It's all physical. It's all these physiological factors that we can measure in the lab. VO2 max, lactate threshold, running economy, anaerobic capacity, anaerobic power. Why can Usain Bolt run faster than everybody else? Because it's all mental? No, because he's got physical gifts that enable him to recruit muscle fibers very quickly, produce a lot of force against the ground very, very quickly. He's more powerful than the other runners, and that's why he can generate more force against the ground that projects him forward, and he can run faster than everybody else. It's neural. It's the neural recruitment of muscle fibers very quickly. It's the power production against the ground, the force production against the ground. It's all of those physical characteristics that make somebody faster than another, whether you're racing 100 meters or you're racing a marathon. There are different qualities for those different kinds of runners, but it's all physical because we're animals. We're physical animals. The human existence is physical. And so that's why I wanted to devote a whole show. If you have questions, please ask me questions, because I'm happy to debate this. I'm happy to look at the research. If you look at the research, the sports psychology research on Olympic athletes, I've been reviewing a lot of this research for the book that I'm writing now about how training your body changes your brain chemistry, which affects the way you think about things. And so if you look at the sports psychology research on Olympians and what are the things that make them confident, physical preparation is one of the things that's right up at the top of that list. When you're physically prepared, and every runner knows this, you all know that when you go to the starting line of a marathon or any race, even if you're not an elite runner, what makes you more confident when you're at the start line? Surely, knowing that you have done the physical preparation is one of the primary things that makes you confident about what you're about to do. It's the same thing with any task in life. Think about your job. If you have a big presentation to do in front of your boss or in front of the CEO, what makes you confident going into that meeting? Knowing that you have prepared, right? You've done all the work to prepare for that meeting. You feel less confident when you're not prepared. Think about when you were in school and you were taking exams. What makes you confident to take that exam? Knowing that you've done the studying, that you have studied everything that you possibly can study, and you've done it over and over and over again so that you know the material, and then you're much more confident when you go into the exam. Running is no different. When you know that you've done the physical preparation, then that gives you a lot more confidence when you go to the starting line of a race. And it gives you a lot more confidence to run that race faster. So that's why I wanted to devote a whole show to this, because I don't want to be misunderstood. The mental preparation and what you think about when you're in those moments of discomfort is very important. But to say that running is 90% mental, that neglects the entire preparation of what it means to be a runner. I mean, running is the most physical that we can be. I mean, it's primal. It's who we are as animals. All mammals run. And even other non-mammals, insects, lizards run, and even vertebrates run. I mean, all animals run. And so it's important to understand who you are as an animal, and that running is so primal to who you are. And so running is as physical as it gets. Like I was recently telling somebody, where it becomes more psychological than perhaps physical is like when you're comparing the 12 finalists at the Olympics. When you get to the Olympics and you're at the finals and the top 12 are on the starting line and only 3 of them are going to get medals, you can't separate those people anymore on the physical. They are at the very top of what it means to be physical. I mean, you can't separate them on their physiology. They all have similar VO2 max. They all have similar economy. They all have similar speed at the lactate threshold, because that represents the top 12 in the world. And so you can't no longer separate them on physical. What's going to determine who wins the gold medal out of those final 12 is often psychological. It's often who has developed the best race strategy that attends to their strengths, and who can calm their nerves so that their nervous anxiety does not get in the way of their physical abilities. And that's perhaps the biggest thing when it comes to racing and the psychological, is being able to shut off the brain, get it, move it to the side, and allow your body to do what it has been trained to do. And that's true for an Olympian Or it's true for a recreational runner who wants to run a 3.5-hour marathon. You prepare physically, and then on the day of the race, you do the best you can to not let your anxiety, your nervousness get in the way. You push that to the side, and you allow your body to do what it has been physically trained to do. And that is something that a lot of sports psychologists spend a lot of time on, because it's very easy to get nervous and allow that nervousness to get in the way of our physical performance. But if you look at and watch this summer, if the Olympics actually happen, watch what these athletes do and how a big part of what they do when they get to the Olympics is about trying to calm themselves down and not let the importance of the moment get in the way of what they've been trained to do physically. That's a big part of what sports psychologists do, because they're physically ready for what's in front of them. But as humans, one of the other things that separates us from other animals is that we allow our heads to get in the way. Other animals can't think about things in the way that we can, and so their head never gets in the way. When a cheetah is about to chase an antelope because that's its lunch, the cheetah does not worry about whether it's fast enough to get that antelope. It just runs as fast as it can, and it can't think about the fact that, oh, this is uncomfortable, I don't know if I'm going to be able to chase that antelope down. It has no choice. If it does not chase that antelope down, it's not going to eat. And so, this is the way that human animals, we can get in our own way. I mean, there have been books written about this, how we can get in our own way. And a big part of the field of sports psychology is figuring out how to dampen that so that we don't get in our own way and prevent our bodies from doing what it's been trained to do. But the physical act is always more important than the psychological, because it is a physical sport. It's running, for crying out loud. It's running. It's as physical as it gets. And so I don't want people to walk away from this thinking that, oh, Jason says that the mental aspect doesn't matter. Yes, it matters, but it's a physical sport. To go from a 3:30 marathon to a 3-hour marathon is not about what you think about. It's about the physical work. It's about training yourself to hold a faster pace. And when you understand that, when you look at it through that lens, then it becomes just a matter of training, doing the work. To go from I don't know why I use that example, but to go from a 3:30 marathon to a sub 3-hour marathon, that means you have to increase your VO2 max, you have to increase your running economy, you have to become more economical, and you have to improve the speed at which the lactate threshold occurs. If you do those three things, you focus the training on those three things, guess what? You're going to run faster. It's all about the physical. And the reason why some people are faster than other people is not because they're mentally tougher. It's because they have physical attributes. They have a faster speed at the lactate threshold, so they can run faster before it starts to feel uncomfortable. Perhaps the biggest difference between an elite runner and a non-elite runner is that the elite runner they can run faster before it starts to feel uncomfortable. And through the process of training, they have gotten used to that discomfort, and so they're better able to handle that discomfort and try to push through that rather than to back off when it becomes physically uncomfortable. That is the key. I've always, when I've spoken about these things in public, if we ever get back to public speaking, I hope that we eventually can do that again. But many times when I've spoken about this at conferences and clinics, I'll use the example of elite marathon runners. Like if you look at the men's world record holder in the marathon, Eliud Kipchoge, I think it comes out to 4:35 or 4:36 pace per mile. So Eliud Kipchoge can run 4:35 per mile and hold that for 2 hours. 4:35 per mile for him is aerobic, whereas most people can't even run 1 mile in 4:35. It would be so anaerobic that you would fatigue. Is the reason that Eliud Kipchoge can run 4:35 pace for a marathon because he's mentally tougher than everyone else in the world? Of course not. There are 7 billion people in the world. It's the same thing with the women's world record holder in the marathon. It used to be Paula Radcliffe at 2:15:25. Now it's a woman from Kenya at 2:14:04, I think it is. That's I think 5:08 pace or 5:07 pace. For most people to run 5:07, that would be highly anaerobic and you would fatigue. So is the reason why the woman who, I forget her name right now, the reason why Bridget Koska, maybe, I think her name's Bridget Koska, is the reason why she can run 5:07 or 5:08 pace for a marathon because she's mentally tougher than every other woman in the world? Of course not. The reason she can do that is because when she's running at 5:07, 5:08 pace, that's still aerobic for her. She's got a very high lactate threshold. She would have to run much faster than that for it to become anaerobic. Whereas everybody else, when they're running at 5:07 pace, it's already highly anaerobic, and they can't hold that pace. And so the ability to hold the pace for a given amount of time, that's physical. That has to do with your physiological factors that influence performance. That's all physical. And if you want to get faster, then you need to improve these physiological characteristics so that you can run faster. So again, I just want to spend some time in today's Run Talk. Hi, Allie. Thanks for joining us. And Run with Allie says, what about nerves? Exactly. So that's what I was just talking about. So that's the biggest thing, is figuring out how to put your nerves to the side and neglect them and just be the physical animal. And that's what a big part of the field of sports psychology is all about in working with athletes, is how do you calm your nerves? Because that's something that other animals don't have in the same way that we have. Other animals do get nervous, they do get scared, but they don't have the ability to overthink things the way humans do, and so it doesn't get in the way of their physical performance the way it does for humans. And so the big part of the psychology is eliminating that, try to block your nerves out so that your body can just do what it's been trained to do. If everyone can just allow their bodies to do what you physically trained your body to do, everybody would run faster. And so the problem that humans have is sometimes our more highly evolved brain can work against us. Because the trick when you're at the starting line of a race or even in the middle of the race is to not let those nerves get in the way and just allow your body to do what it has been trained to do. I know I keep repeating that, but that is all that racing is all about. It's about allowing your body to do what you physically have trained it to do. And if you can eliminate or dampen the negative thoughts and the nerves, you're going to run better. But it's not going to make you go from like a 3:20 marathon to a 2:59 marathon. That change is not mental. That change is physical. But in order to get faster, you have to train the physiology. You have to make your body able to hold a faster pace for a given amount of time. That's a physical endeavor. And so all the people on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you see this in conversations with people, when they tell you that, oh, like I just saw this morning by someone posted this on Instagram, that running is 90% mental. Well, if that were true, if it were really 90% mental, then 90% of your training should be spent focusing on your mind and only 10% of your time focused on the physical. And that's clearly not the case. This is a physical sport. Running is as physical as it gets. It is the most physical thing that you can do. It's who we evolved to be. We all ran as kids without anybody ever telling us to do it. We started with a crawl, then we went to a walk, and then we went to a run. Nobody ever told us how to do that. Why didn't we stop at crawling? Because running is who we are as animals. It's a natural progression to go from a crawl to a walk to a run. We all do it without anybody ever teaching us how to do it. The human existence is physical. And if we remember that, and we train the physical, then it goes back to the conversation I had 20 years ago with that Kenyan runner at the track. That if you do the physical work, there's nothing to think about. It's all physical. And that's my lesson for the day. That running in and of itself is a physical endeavor. The only time that it gets psychological and mental is in calming your nerves and not letting the nerves get in the way. And then number two, what do you do in the moments of discomfort when you're running a race? What do you say to yourself? That's the only time that the mental becomes important. is what do you say to yourself when it becomes physically uncomfortable? Do you talk negative to yourself and get down on yourself and say, oh, I can't do this? Or do you stay positive and try to deal with that discomfort and find out who you really are? And that's one of the best benefits of running. This is something I discovered from a very young age, and it has been the theme throughout my running life, is in that moment of discomfort, you have an opportunity to learn about who you really are. And you can be the person that you want to be. And that's probably a great note to end on. That's my thought, my final thought for the day. After every episode, at the end of every episode, I have a final thought for the day. And so my final thought for today is to use that moment of discomfort when you're in the race, whether it's a mile or 800 meters and it's extremely uncomfortable for a short period of time, or it's a marathon and it gets slightly uncomfortable for a long period of time. Regardless, in those moments of discomfort, who do you want to be? What do you say to yourself? How do you want to act? How do you want to behave? And then train yourself physically to be able to become more resilient, to handle that discomfort. Because that's the beauty of running, and that's the beauty of life. That through our physical preparation, we can become more resilient on the outside body as well as on the inside brain and mind. And so that's my final thought for the day. Become more resilient through your physical preparation, and in those moments of discomfort, learn who you are and narrow the gap between who you are and who you want to be. So thank you very much for joining. Come back next week for another episode of Run Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Jason Karp. See you next week.